What is shaking, Internet? This is Salt's bringing you the How to Tank for Dummies Oregorger LFR guide. This guide will cover the basic tanking strategy for the first boss and trash in the Slagworks instance of Blackrock Foundry. I'll also briefly cover the other interesting aspects for those not tanking, although that won't be the focus. For those in queue or already in the raid, here's a quick synopsis. Keep trash faced away from the raid and move out of fire zones. On the boss, swap tanks whenever you lose stacks of acid Torrent. And when not tanking the boss, stand in between the boss and the ranged group if you have one, as close to the boss as you can to soak the acid Torrent. When he rolls around, break boxes, and don't be in front of the boss. So, the Blackrock Foundry has a decent section of trash, and technically either Oregorger or Gruul can be the first boss, but most groups I've seen go to Oregorger first. The trash at the beginning will be the same no matter what. You'll have a variety of trash, but the ones you care about the most are the big Oregorger haulers and the slag shapers. The big guys will cast slag breath, which is a frontal cone attack. Just face them away from the raid and you'll be fine. The slag shapers are normal caster types, but their rain of slag hurts like the dickens. The nice thing is they can be interrupted, so try to focus them down first. To get to the bosses here is pretty simple. Just hug the right wall. The packs on the bottom are what we just discussed, and the same for both bosses. If you hug the right wall, you can avoid some of it, but don't count on the whole raid making it through. Going through the door to the right will wind you down to the forking section, where you can choose which boss to fight. The trash on the catwalks here are supposed to be kited. They get enraged, and you're supposed to run away from them, but I find that using minor cooldowns is enough in LFR, so just AoE them and keep them bunched up at the T. Going left on the catwalk is for Oregorger, where you get to fight a few more mobs of trash. The big ones will roll around and fixate on random raiders, but AoE tank them when you can. The little Gorons are very annoying as they come in large groups and they drop acid pools on the ground. Try your best not to stand in any of these and kite them around. I hate this section because the ceiling is so low, so you can't really get any good visuals. It kind of feels like playing an old N64 game here. In the final room, you'll have to fight a few more packs of the big Gorons in a maze-like arena. This is where you fight the big guy himself. Oregorger is a 2-phase fight, although it's really a 1.25 phase fight. In the first phase, he'll do about 3 moves, 2 of which matter for the tanks. The first is Wretched Blackrock, which just makes some nasty zones on the ground at random raiders. He'll throw these at ranged raiders mostly, so this hopefully will never be an issue for you. Blackrock Barrage is his second move, which is a very damaging move for the whole raid. This will be cast regularly, but can and should be interrupted. Try to interrupt this every time you can since it won't be terribly frequent in LFR. It is cast much more frequently in other modes though, so be aware. The last and most important move for tanks is Acid Torrent. So let's get this out of the way first. Oregorger technically needs a tank, so he isn't beating up on the DPS, but he does basically nothing to his actual tank. Now the real tanking job is this Acid Torrent move. Now Oregorger will throw this Acid Torrent at ranged members, which does a large amount of damage to the first person it hits, and then a much smaller amount of damage to everyone else it hits. Hence, the real tank should be standing in between the boss and the ranged members, preferably very close to the boss. Now the idea for this is that you'll swap the tanks every time you get a stack of Acid Torrent, because every hit increases the damage you take from Acid Torrent by a lot, like 200, 300, 400%. In theory, it's great, but in practice, especially in LFR, it just doesn't always pan out that tanks will be swapping correctly and standing in the right spot. Now, ranged raiders may not be stacked, melee may be in your way, etc. Lots of different problems could potentially be here. So I found that the best way to do this is just to have one person be the normal tank and tank the boss, while you, being the smart one who knows the fights, stands very close to the boss and eats the acid torrents. The first one doesn't hurt terribly, but the second will do 200% more damage, and the third hits like a truck. There's a remedy for this. Move. That's simple. Move. Pop a big cooldown for the third acid torrent, then move for the fourth. Let a melee person take the hit instead. It likely won't kill them on the first stack, so no big deal. Now, to be fair, it's possible to completely ignore the acid torrent completely, and just hope that it doesn't hit the same player more than once. I've seen this work as well. But you have 2 tanks, so you might as well use them, right? Now, if your other tank wants to, you can actually do the swap. This just means that you should swap the boss every time he casts Acid Torrent, and each of you should be eating 1 Acid Torrent and then just tanking the boss. This requires a lot of coordination and movement, so just swap before you take 3 acid torrents to the face, and you'll probably be fine. Now, every so often, technically when the boss runs out of mana, but not important to know, the boss will go on a feeding frenzy, marking phase 2. This is a very simple phase. The boss will roll around doing lots of damage to anyone in front of him and crashing into walls. When he crashes into a wall, he does a decent amount of damage to everyone in the raid. The longer this phase lasts, the more damage this crashing will do. To end the phase, the boss needs to eat 10 ores. Players will make the ore spawn by destroying the boxes that appear during this phase. In a nutshell, don't stand in front of the boss and break boxes. That's pretty much all you do in this phase. He'll roll around like a madman, but just try to stand behind him and you'll be fine. Break boxes as you can and keep on rolling. Very nice. After he eats 10 ores, he'll go back to being a tankable boss that shoots acid and bad rocks at people. Rinse and repeat, and he'll probably die before getting back to the rolling phase a second time. So let's go ahead and recap. Main tank tanks the boss facing away from the raiders and does pretty much nothing. Off tank stands close to the boss and soaks up acid torrents until they can't soak them up anymore. Let one through, then go back to soaking them. Don't stand in bad puddles, and when he starts rolling away, stay behind him and break boxes. He's a fairly simple encounter to start the raid, so go tanking with confidence. For those looking to try real raiding, the first big difference will be that the tanks pretty much have to switch on every acid torrent, as they hurt a lot more. Now the second big difference is that Blackrock Barrage, the move that he casts that's interruptible, will be cast much more often, requiring more of your raid to actually keep up the interrupting. I hope you have enjoyed this guide for Dummies. If you want to see other guides for Blackrock Foundry, click the annotation in the top left of the video or in the description below to go to the main page. Please like, favorite, share, subscribe, all that jazz, and, as always, you keep it salty, Internet.